We have 3 viewers now. We've tripled our viewers. This is great.
I thought it there's like 4 people in chat now.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Go for
Wow.
5.
us. Hot daggone, look at us. I only see 3
There's myself, Captain
or
Tryhard,
4.
Gwyn, Oz, and Ultra.
Yeah, I wasn't counting us.
Yeah. Well,
We
I'm
don't count.
sorry.
Sorry, I mean, it's weird to count yourself as a viewer.
Well, I have an extra tab open so that I can air quotes watch it. So I guess that makes me a viewer.
Sure. Well, I guess seeing that it is now officially 7:30 and, we can start.
Mm-hmm.
So, hello everybody that decided to show up for our first attempt at a fireside chat with GMs. What we're going to try to do here is we have not really done much of a structure for this because it is sort of impromptu, even though we've had it posted for a while. Because really what we're trying to do is get connected with the GMs and offer suggestions for things that perhaps you're having a stumbling block with. The idea came to be when people were asking, how do you handle travel? And to me, travel in Shadowrun is pretty easy to handle, and other people are mystified, whereas other people have other topics. And I guess we could go by like start with Oz, because you have an O, and that's a neat name.
Okay. I suppose we can start with me.
No pressure.
Um, I can touch on travel a bit because it is a good topic, and how a GM is going to handle travel can really make or break a run. Um, because it's an artificial barrier to kind of railroad the players into having the equipment that you want. Like done right, travel shouldn't be anything. It's okay. Johnson's got a shipping container or a private plane. You can take what you need and you get there. And then if it's done wrong, it's okay. Well, you've got a flight that leaves in 20 minutes, and by the way, you're going to be hijacking an airplane in flight. It's like, well,
Not
how
naming
the
any
fuck?
names. That's
How the hell
that was
am
a
I going
learning
to?
experience for them.
Well, I mean, this is this is something that I did on a prime run. This is why Stamp is an internationally wanted terrorist in Italy and has the CIA pissed off at him because they actually had to hijack a rendition flight
Yes.
in flight. So that particular set of travel was we got our travel was hand waved to Europe, but then we had to come up with our own plane rental and actually come up with the operation to get it done. But done right, like I said, travel should be if you're going to deny the team essential equipment, then the GM needs to pay for that equipment. Otherwise, the GM should just really just hand wave that travel. It should never be commercial because if it's commercial, then your street Sams are getting arrested at the airport.
All
No
right.
ifs, no ands, no buts.
All right.
That's that.
So
Yeah.
I go ahead. Sorry. So like I said, we need to figure out an over. So whereas I disagree as far as like having people travel commercially. Generally speaking, yes, it is. It is a retirement waiting to happen if you're trying to go through airport security with restricted gear. But the way I generally handle it is if I know a job is going to require long distance travel by flight or by boat, and I want to give them a little bit more of a challenge than just asking players. Because if you ask people, like, what are you carrying? It's always like, oh, everything on my sheet. And that's boring, because challenge the travel is supposed to me to be part of the challenge. So what I may do is if the run is set for Saturday, then I will post on Monday and say, okay, guys, so you got a little bit of homework to do. I want you to take this document that I'm about to send to you, and each of you list 10 items that you think is essential for the run. And it might be something like, five tag erasers, or a rating 6 area jammer. And if you got one person listing 5 tag erasers, then that covers tag erasers for the team. If somebody puts down a jammer, that covers jammers for the team. And that is something that Mr. Johnson or the fixer will have waiting for them on site. Because one of the biggest problems that I find with travel is usually you get over there and there's no connection that you have that can provide you gear. Like you don't have a fixer that can get you something. And if you don't want to go through the extreme of having them do homework and post stuff, because yeah, being a player, I can say that we can be a bit lazy and nobody wants to do homework. Then the very least you could do is provide them with a fixer that can get them rental gear that they'll get money back for. But the main thing is with travel, it allows them to play with the bigger toys with the rules that they can't come back with it. Because I mean, yeah, you might get to play the Panther assault cannon in Guam, but you're not going to be able to take that on your commercial flight back. You know, that's
Right.
the way I handle it, is by giving people homework and having them fill out what they want. That way, if there is gear shortages, well, you guys have had a week to figure out what stuff you wanted to carry. I'm sorry that you forgot ammunition, but you, you should have wrote that down. Usually ammunition I hand wave, but just as a broad stance, that's the way I look at it. And I am
Right.
done.
Okay.
So another thing with travel that is super important and nobody ever really pays much attention to is language. Um, when you go to a different country, yes, there will be people there who speak English most likely, but at the same time, you're going to be outed immediately as an outsider. Your accent and such will tip everybody off. So if you start coming into an area and are like, "How's that crime around here, y'all?" They're going to be like, "This guy's up to something." And they will either take you for a ride because stupid gringo don't know nothing. Let's get what we can out of him, or like not talk to them at all. They will feign not speaking English and that kind of stuff. So it's a way that it ramps up the challenge of a run without directly adding to the difficulty, if that makes sense. The social skills are all capped with your ranks in a language skill. I forget the page that's actually
Yes.
listed on in the book. So you could take a whole bunch of these social characters to go infiltrate a party in Venezuela, and all of a sudden it's like, ha, watch you communicate through pantomime and such. I will use interpretive dance to get my point across. Um, but that also, the second part of that is, for the most part, your Seattle contacts aren't going to be available. So supplying some dude for them to be able to at least get a hold of somebody or some basic equipment. And in these situations, why worry about connection tests? If it is something that is, you don't want the team to come up with a good idea for solving a problem that has been put forth to them, but be defeated by dice. If
I
it's
had
like,
that happen.
it's
Our
like, yeah,
job depended on a grenade, and none of us could get a grenade.
and they're grenades. Like that's not a big deal. Um, there are lots of other ways that can also accidentally come back and bite you. As I now struggle to come up with those things. Um,
The brain cell that held that thought just died.
yeah, no, that's so weird.
Um,
Oh, now I
know
remember what it
that.
was. Based
Go
upon
ahead.
the context of where you're going. A run very recently, I went to Tajikistan, where there is a Chinese occupation and an insurgency. So it doesn't make sense in that situation to be able to find guns everywhere, because the Chinese would have taken them or broken them if they were carried openly. But we found out after going through the run for a little while that probably almost everybody there owned a larger than handgun sized weapon, just due to the way that things kind of were. So if we were able to find a guy that we could have a connection with, he could probably get us most of like the common weaponry and stuff we would want or have to have access to. Um, Oz, you weren't there. Do you have any commentary on that particular situation?
Since I still haven't seen an AAR on that particular situation, I do know that when I send runners out, I will allow them. I give them as much information as the Johnson would theoretically have if he's calling in an out of town team. He knows a lot more than Johnson's always know more than they let on, but they're going to give more because they're essentially paying quote unquote top dollar to bring in somebody from outside of town who has no connections because those connections are going to be tracked. So I say, all right, get your contacts on the horn. They are going to have the connections to be able to get that gear delivered. And so it will be waiting for the team when they get there, which is a great way to get around a lot of this. Oh, well, I've got a whole bunch of forbidden crap. How am I going to carry this on the plane? So now we don't have to worry about that because your contacts have already taken care of those logistics because that's what they're there for. Having a contact there, like a temporary 4-1 or whatever, is a great idea. And in a home game situation, I would be using him as just the potential gateway into future stuff there. But in a hub thing, having a temporary contact there for stuff that for incidentals that may come up is a good thing, especially if they've also got ties to your contacts back home.
All right. And we will switch to another topic. Again, to put Oz in front seat on this one. A profound statement that really changed my point of view on GMing was by Oz, whereas it's if you can't challenge them, entertain them, and that really changed my outlook on GMing. So I will allow him to express his thoughts on that as he's the one that gave it to me.
All right. So to give some context behind that, we had, and we continually have, issues. Everybody's style of GMing is different. The things that I feel are most important are, as I said, if you need to be able to challenge the players because that's what keeps them engaged. It is a problem to be solved, and they're going to apply their special skills to solve that. Now, if they have solved the problem in a way that has completely gobsmacked you as a GM, and you're not going to be able to challenge them, then you need to entertain them to keep their attention. And if you fail on both of these points, then you've got a failed run. Essentially, you've just wasted 2 to 4 hours of your time and of the table's time. And in context of the hub, where we as GMs are getting rewarded GM points for that, it cheapens that payment. It's basically it comes across like a cash grab. So we had a GM who was throwing out runs that were not challenging. I need you guys to go into a bar and steal a briefcase. And in return for this, I will give you almost no money and almost no karma, and I will take 5 GMP for myself so I can go spend that on my character. So it comes across as not even an ulterior motive. There's an overt motive of fuck you guys, I need GMP. So the run was not challenging, and as I read the AAR, it wasn't entertaining. As we get into these streams, we are not just entertaining the players, we're not just entertaining ourselves, we are entertaining more people because this is how we draw more people to the hub. We get more players, we get more games. So if you're not going to be entertaining, you've got to be challenging. And if you're neither, then TD is going to sit down with you and have a chat. That's pretty much my thoughts on the matter.
And that came off rather, at least at the end, slap on the wristy. But
it's not really as ominous as it sounds. I mean, we may come to you and offer suggestions as to how to improve or offer different situations for players to get involved with. As a player myself, I've been in runs where where it was basically just like an entire slog fest. It was just like go to this set location and fight a whole bunch of NPCs. And while it was challenging, it was not at all entertaining to be through. It was just like a set list of fights where like the decker had nothing to do and the face was feeling overwhelmed by the firepower we were facing. And that's no fun for anybody. So by the context of entertaining, you should also be able should keep your plans loose, in my opinion, when it comes to your runs. Like if you've decided that I'm sending my guys up here against this group of gangers, and there are 30 gangers in this bar. If you get there and your guys are not able to handle 30 gangers, then perhaps you need to adjust those 30 gangers to where it's not 30 combatants. It's like maybe 10 combatants and 20 hangers on. So now you've got civilians in the firefight that, people that may actually care about not killing civilians have to avoid. And that provides a different challenge than just a straight, okay, you've got 30 condition bars to fill, go.
The
And I'm not pointing anybody out because I mean, Ultra Lord, you're a fine GM, and I'm not talking about you, so don't feel that I am. This is situations I've been in since I've started the hub. I mean, we had one GM early on in the hub that was notorious for his super secret layers under the super secret layer that nobody above that secret layer knew about, and there was only one elevator to get down there. Go. And so basically, it was like a dungeon crawl, and it's like you have the you have the office building on the surface, you have the secret layer underneath that. Underneath that, you have the secret layer that the above layers don't know anything about. It was ridiculous. Nobody ever left the facility, so you couldn't socially engineer. I asked the GM one time, were there ever any employees that were fired that maybe we can get an idea of what the interior of the building is like? He's like, oddly enough, when you go and investigate that, everybody that has ever been fired from this company is dead. And it's like, well, thanks for stealing that potential information source from us and forcing us just to have to kick in the doors and fight all your powered up NPCs. So that's all I have. And now, Rob?
It is okay to be dump trucked. It is one of those situations where it's going to happen to every GM, where you're going to have this idea, then somebody's going to come along and either drive a literal dump truck into your plot, or completely circumnavigate your plans in a way that you had no idea that people would consider thinking of. In those situations, you don't really want to do a, oh god, this is only taking an hour because they're going to be able to get through this. Sometimes in that situation, you just gotta have to take it on the chin and allow the players to have that short session win, because otherwise it's like, they circumnavigated everything because they found some loophole that I never thought of. Now, if all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, this is what we want to do, and then you just come up with an arbitrary, seemingly random thing that doesn't make a lot of sense, the players are going to see through that, and it's going to ruin the experience for everybody. And there are plenty other things you can do to not necessarily prolong the run, but to continue going on.
Flush it out.
Yeah, I had that happen. And the way I handled it is that the person that had the widget that they were supposed to be after, they had to track down after they got there. And so it gave a little bit more pad to the run.
But if it keeps...
FAC is not that super powerful, really. But continue on. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, Bamps.
No, it's fine. I was actually perfectly timed because I had to cough.
Which transitions us to another topic.
Not quite yet, because there's actually a part on the travel that I was kind of skipped that I have since forgotten and then remembered and come back around to. Um, in situations where you're going to other countries, if you have characters with a decent amount of unspent karma, travel by boat or things that could take a couple of days would be a good in-universe way to give them the time they need to perhaps learn the local language, or if they would be crazy, some of the customs of the area, or do some in-depth data searches, or make some pre-phone calls to get around some delivery time stuff. Um, that pseudo-inflation is of time will kind of let you get away with a little bit more. The thing that Kat was trying to throw me under before I came back to that was going to be microphone discipline. If you guys don't have anything to say about what I just said about the travel
No,
time idea.
that's something that I hadn't thought of, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's another useful tool. But we shall continue on with the mic discipline.
Oh dear God, this is one of my biggest pet peeves in recent history. So everybody knows what they are doing on their end of the microphone. I was eating ice cream earlier, hence the little picture of ice cream in the corner. Um, and that kind of stuff. Yet, a lot of times when I'll either be on a run or listening to a run or listen to the myriad of podcasts that I listen to, um, mic discipline is one of the biggest things that can really ruin an experience. Um, there was one podcast I listened to where it was a really interesting and engaging L5R story, but it was 4 or 5 guys sitting around a kitchen table essentially playing, being a bunch of guys, so they would be like burping and stuff, and it's like, dude, I don't want to listen to that. Um, which then comes into us, which is super relevant because we are all online because we live all over the world. Um, this isn't necessarily a GM thing, but it totally can be the GM's responsibility to be the guy that's like, dude, if you could just mute your mic when you're eating your crunchy bag of chips, or if there is a
Dark Lord of the Sith.
yeah, if there is somebody who is blatantly abusing table etiquette, the it's going to fall onto you to, I don't want to say handle that, but to handle it. Um, there have been a couple of situations that have cropped up, at least on my personal runs. I can think of at least like 2 where I've had to actually grind everything to a halt to answer. And you're not in the wrong doing that as a GM. You shouldn't feel as though, oh no, what if they are upset with me? Chances are they don't realize they're doing it, or they thought they muted. I know on my headset I have a light that shows up on my mic when I'm muted, and it's literally out of the lower left-hand corner of my eye. That will change for everybody. But like the Skype box that comes up when you're not on the Skype window, it has a little blue microphone thingy in there that has an X when you mute yourself. Just double check yourselves, or use an alternative push to talk type method for Skype. Um, if somebody is actually being, I want to say, like, if you bring it up to somebody and they continue to with their disruptive behavior, we do have an interpersonal department that can talk to them about it. And you're not the bad guy here. And this kind of goes for everybody, not just GMs, but like, you're eating. Double and triple check yourself. Don't be that guy.
Times of summer.
Right. Mic discipline is important on hub games because if you are leaving your mic unmuted and you're having that bag of chips, as Bamps helpfully pointed out, somebody who's actually trying to talk is now being talked over. It is literally interrupting somebody else's action. It is interrupting the game. And while sometimes it can be entertaining, especially if somebody in the middle of a gargantuan combat falls asleep and is snoring through the microphone while you're trying to describe a grenade going off. Um, you know,
How oddly specific.
I know, right? Um, you get annoyed by that, and that also means that now you're distracted. You're going to lose your train of thought. That neuron that had that thought just died, and it's just this terrible cascade of things. Um, and it's not fun for anybody. And I think the biggest part about it is that literally nobody realizes just how sensitive their microphone is. Like I know I've got a chintzy $15 desk microphone from Logitech. They're literally their cheapest model, and this thing catches it catches talking from freaking downstairs, and it catches my cat when he howls for attention, and my wife when she wants attention too. Hi, honey. Um, so mic discipline, yes, very, very super important. And there is actually I mean, there are things that you can get like portable isolation booths in order to minimize the amount of ambient noise that comes through. But most importantly, that blue mute button is just the bestest thing ever. That's what I got to say about that.
All right, so as we have talked about mic discipline, I think this would be a good transition over to the agreement. If Bamps could post that on the chat so
Yeah, let
people
me
will be
find
able to see it.
the
I
link.
just popped it into the Skypes.
Anyway, I got it. I posted it.
So a while back, a friend of mine named Cotton introduced me to this thing called the agreement. And while it was not specifically for the hub, I and another player got together and we started adding in things to it to fit our particular community. And as a GM and as a player, I feel that there's a social contract that goes on whenever a group of people sit down to play a game. And once you start deviating from this social contract, it starts to be disruptive and sometimes destructive to the mood that a GM is trying to build. Like, for example, I tend to do more serious runs. I mean, even when I'm playing like a jokey run, there's consequences and stuff that's going on. This means that usually I'm not the type of GM that is going to take players that decide that their character is going to be carrying around a pink stuffed unicorn with explosives in it and want to thrust it into the Mr. Johnson's face because oh my god, it's so cute. Um, so generally speaking, when I post a game, I post the agreement on there so that everybody gets an idea of what I'm expecting. Like for example, if you as a player or as well as we're supposed to all be GMs here, as players are coming up with ideas, if they come up with something that is reasonable, I'll work with it. You know, like I had a map of a building that I had the players wanting to break into, and they're like, okay, so we know there's cameras there. Where are the positions of the cameras? And I'm like drawing little dots on the corners of the building, and one of the players says, oh, it appears like there's a big gap in their cameras in the back. And so I'm sitting there looking at the map, looking at the dots, kind of sighing, because either A, it's like, damn it, they discovered this hole in my plan when I didn't really have that in depth of a security knowledge, or I could just embrace what they're like. And they're like, so Jim, do we notice any breaks in the cameras? It's like, well, apparently there's a big one in the back you guys can use. And so, as opposed to stymieing their creativity, I embraced it and let them succeed through their own observational skills and made it brought them more into the table to enjoy themselves. And there's a whole lot of stuff on there. You know, it's like everybody thinks that you've got to have like a 15 or a 20 in your main skill, but really, you know, a 10 is a good skill. A 10 dice pool is pretty decent. And so I don't punish people that only have like 10s or or 8s in their skill and say, "Oh my God, no, you've got to get 7 successes to achieve this goal." You know, I mean, sure, somebody that's hyper specialized will do it better, but just because somebody has a quote mediocre skill doesn't mean that they have absolutely no chance to succeed, because you can give them bonuses. Like if they come up with a creative way to negotiate their way past guards, like for example, recently had a group of players in a run that I was on decided that they wanted to try to go past a security guard, and the best way to do it was to buy 30 pizzas, bunch of sodas, and basically tell the guards, like, either we can deliver these pizzas up there or you can. It's up to you. And it was a good solid way for them to do it. They just really didn't have even the bare chance of pulling it off, unfortunately, because the dice were against them. And so that's all I have on that topic. If anyone else would like to jump in.
I got a little something on that. If
Yeah, go for it.
so, there is a Pavlovian method that you can use to actually increase the RP at your table. This is mostly for socially oriented characters. It goes kind of in with what Kat was saying about um, mediocre dice pools. Is if your character makes a good explanation of what they are doing and is, say, using terrain that you have described as in the scene to help them, throw them extra dice. You're like, yep, here, have +2 because there is dense shrubbery around the area. Have, here's 4 more dice to your contest because you have your teammates in supporting evidence and you have a very good in-universe excuse. That's not the word I want. Justification.
Pretext.
Those words, yes. It can help a lot of not directly faced characters come up with non-bullet related answers to your problems.
Or worse, explosive related.
Right? They're just really big bullets.
No.
At the same time, I like to, like for the social modifiers table or the things like range. Well, range is a bad one because I usually throw that out. But like division modifiers and that kind of stuff, I will usually apply that to the NPC sides of things because it is disempowering if I go through, like, okay, you're going to make a social test. Let me pull this up. Like, all right, this guy hates elves, lose 2 dice. This guy is having a bad day at work, lose 2 more dice. And all of this other stuff, unless you are trying for a disempowering feel, it's easier to take those penalty dice and just give them to your NPC as additional resistance dice. In a situation where you're trying to, say, go through a ghoul-infested sewer system that you ended up in because you're running from KE or something along those lines where you want the players to feel crippled and pressured, by all means slam on the penalties on them rather than putting it on your NPCs. But I find for just most general things, it's going to slow your game down if you are pausing every roll to be like, all right, and then take -4. Because chances are your players know their dice pools fairly well. And then rather than being like, all right, I've got a dice pool of 15, do I have any penalties? And then you're waiting for you to say yes or no and then how many, is going to add more time to your game and disrupt the flow of the story you as a table are trying to create.
Right.
Now, I'll say anything.
I like the agreement. I like that social contract. It's very Lockean view of gaming. Some of the stuff that's on here we've already kind of touched on. But I think the most important things I find in the agreement are the ones that make the most efficient use of our time. Like, if you know that combat is coming up, don't wait until your turn to think about what you're going to do. think about what you're going to do, and then you're ready to go once your turn hits. You can always make a small change to your plan on the fly, but since most GMs don't follow the convention that is set, rules as written, where you declare your action at the beginning of the round and you execute your action when your turn comes up. You both declare and execute on your turn. That gives you the freedom to know what you're going to do as soon as that round opens, and then turn around and make that change if your target has changed in between the start of the round and when your turn shows up. Same goes for anything else. Like as a GM, I barely, if ever, pay attention to modifiers. I'm just going to go off of a straight dice pool because I think you need to be challenged, or you've got this plan so on lock that it's going to be a walk in the park for you. I mean, I could go through like Rob said, target is biased, target is angry, target smells like corn chips. It doesn't matter. Is this dude conceivably going to be a problem? If not, then yeah, I might throw 6 dice because he's a rating 2 moog. If he is going to be a problem, yeah, he might throw 10 because all those are subconsciously coming into play. But we don't need to refer to a table every single time something comes up unless the player comes up with the table first. I mean, if they're going to start out with it, like, all right, I'll play by that rule, but you might not like what happens.
To touch on a thing while we have a moment,
Sure.
if you find that combat is drawing down because people aren't exactly paying attention, you are more than welcome to, it's the heat of combat, things are happening quickly. If you can declare your action to me within a few seconds, have +1 or +2 dice just for being speedy.
Absolutely.
Throw that little Pavlovian reflex in there where it's like, all right, players love dice. Give them more dice to throw for doing what? For jumping through your hoops. Do it. I have a bad habit, I know, of when my turn comes up, I will ask like 4 questions that are relative to what I want to do, but were not discussed in the passes previous, and that is unfortunately, without going into ridiculously descriptive stuff that 90% of players won't ever make use of, nothing you can avoid, but that's because I'm a jerk ass and nothing I can do about that.
Right.
Embrace that.
My girlfriend agrees, by the way. I don't think you guys heard that, but
I hear her laughing at least.
There is a difference between asking clarification questions so you know exactly what you're going to do as your action comes up, and, oh, hey, I wasn't paying attention because it wasn't my turn yet. Can you explain everything that has happened up to this point? Because I noticed that this comes up in combat a lot. People tend not to pay a lot of attention unless it directly affects them. And Shadowrun, when you get into a tactical situation, you need to have that full tactical awareness, no matter if you are the gun bunny attack, or your phone is ringing, or you're the face trying to do leadership roles to command people. Know what your team is doing, and know especially what the enemy is doing, because they're the dudes shooting at you. So that is, like having Rob as Omni ask, okay, so I've got 4 guys in front of me, but one of them are any of them kind of like rubbing their jaw, because I'm totally going to make that one unconscious and then pull his teeth out for interrogation purposes later, because it's already started.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So to be able to ask a question like that, okay, great. No, that was not Oz's phone. Oz's phone is on vibrate.
That was Cat's phone, and he muted himself while he talked to his mother. So, bite me.
Hi, Cat's mommy.
She's off the phone now, so good.
So yeah, and it's kind of tertiary to the agreement, but it is, I think, an important thing is have situational awareness. Be part of that social contract and pay attention to what your fellows are doing when they're in the limelight, because it's going to make things cooler for everybody, and it shows them that respect, which is, I think, essential to making a game run well.
All right. So as we have built this as a fireside chat and questions and answers, and Ultra Lord has fielded a question. Um, Once we answer his, we can open up the floor and start answering questions. So you wanted to talk about the types of Mr. Johnson's A to Z? Could you give me more of an idea what you mean?
I got it. Ready?
Go.
Everybody can be a Johnson. Anybody can be a Johnson.
True story.
The biggest hurdle in being a Johnson is two things. One is money. Two is connections. We all have things in our lives that we would love to get done, but we lack either the connections or the money, or I like to think the moral scruples to not. But that just changes us into a different type of Johnson. There's your standard mafia guy might have things he's trying to do behind other mafiosos' backs, or he may have gotten in trouble for something that he needs cleaned up, or his idea got put the kibosh on because it was going to cause some kind of deal. Your local gangers might, granted, they probably won't have as much of the capital, but at the same time, they have beef with people. And if they can get other people to hash their beef without getting themselves shot or implicated, they have a reputation for not exactly being the most intelligent of NPCs. But at the same time, there's a certain level of street craftiness and fight for survival that I know I'll hire some Shadowrunners to go in there and do this for a bunch of drugs or beetles that we have laying around, a little bit of Nuyen, and after the runners soften them up, I'll go in there and take that territory, or maybe we'll send the runners and then just get killed, and then we'll come in and clean everybody up. Your corporate people have all kinds of crazy, shady shit that you need or want done behind back doors. That's how corporates work today. So I know Oz had a thing he talked about the other day about the motivation of the Johnson, so I'm just going to flip it over to him real quick.
All right. So, and I'll throw in the professionalism point. When I make a Johnson, a Johnson has two or three things. One, he's got to have the budget for it. How much is he willing to spend to accomplish his objective? And the second is, what is exactly his objective? Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be something he hires a team for. I will throw out three quick examples. Okay, so we have a MacGuffin. It is bread box sized, and I've got three people who want it. So Johnson number one is perhaps a mid-level corporate employee, makes no more than $60,000 a year, kind of like between low and middle lifestyle. He needs the MacGuffin because his family is being threatened by somebody else, and he is so desperate he needs this MacGuffin now, so he's going to pay out $60,000 to get it done. A seasoned Shadowrunner team, if they can see that he's nervous, can roll this dude for every penny he's got, or they can take the high and mighty route and be like, what's really going on? And now the MacGuffin doesn't even matter. The MacGuffin is now his family, and these runners can go do the hooding thing. I'll look at that in a second, Ultra Lord. I like using Neil because Neil is my favorite Johnson because he's got a life story. He's got his motivations. He's got a personality. And if you can have a Johnson that's got a personality, you can see why he wants Shadowrunners to do this thing. And Neil's motivation is hate. He hates Shadowrunners because the Shadowrunners that he's interacted with have been, by and large, terrible. And as a result, he makes runs that are designed that no matter what the runner does, he is going to win. To it, he hired a team of runners to steal a container from a port. What was inside the container doesn't matter. The container itself didn't matter. The point is, either they're going to get him this container and he can resell the container and sell the stuff inside and make a tidy profit, or they're going to mess this up. KE's going to get called, Harbor Security's going to get called, everybody's going to converge over here, and meanwhile he's got another team somewhere else doing something completely different to bring his thing in. He's just paid 50,000 new yen or 60,000 new yen for distraction. And so coming up with a personality for it, and like Rob said, anybody can be a Johnson. You can have, I know I've talked with Ultralord about this. He's got a Johnson who is essentially a Buddhist monk, and so his runs tend to go, we need this done for the good of the community. We can't pay a lot, but you'll feel really good and you'll be able to sleep better at night knowing that you have done this good thing. On the other hand, I've got Royce. Royce is a corporate Johnson who also hates Shadowrunners for largely the same reasons, but his budget is a lot bigger, and so his jobs tend to go a lot more, a lot richer, a lot more high stakes. So whereas Neil is going to be almost strictly street level, dealing with getting a 70-year-old guy out of a out of a crumbling tenement in the middle of nowhere that happens to have a water tower full of gyres a half-mile away. Royce is going to send you into another corporation's R&D department to go extract this one dude who he's going to vivisect later, but fuck, you guys don't need to know that.
All right. Going on Mr. Johnson's, their personalities, their motivations, I have a Mr. Johnson that is my go-to guy, and he is what is considered to be a professional Mr. Johnson. He does not work for any specific corporation. He has no corporate ties. They come to him and ask him to find runners to solve problems, and he is ruthless. He has no time for runners that are not professionals. If people go in and they act like an idiot in front of Mr. Johnson, the fact is that he has interviewed people before you and he has people to interview after you. If you don't impress him as somebody that can complete this job, he'll give you the option of either leaving before we discuss the details or being detained until the job is completed. So if the runners try to investigate him and find out, what company does he work for, he's another cutout that gives a buffer between the, excuse me, mic discipline had to sneeze. So he is another cutout for the corporations to give more plausible deniability, because we clearly have no idea who this Johnson fellow is. He's not one of our employees. We don't know why he would do something.
Somebody contracted him posing as us. This is ludicrous.
Yeah. And so I like to have Mr. Johnsons that have reasons to do what they do. He is given a job like a Shadowrunner, and his job is to contact fixers and find a group of runners that is going to complete this job. One of the main things that I see that is strange as a player and as a GM is when you have Mr. Johnson that will just accept the wackiest, zaniest PCs to handle a job. I mean, Mr. Johnson or the fixer is there to ensure that a job gets done. And if these players do not fill him with confidence, I mean, these characters do not fill him with confidence, then why would he hire them to do this job? I mean, these people are all basically day laborers, if you think about it. I mean, Shadowrunners are hired ad hoc for whatever job is needed. So we have 5 people that show up, 4 look competent, and then we've got like the guy with the cardboard sniper rifle. Why don't we just say we'll take you 4, and you can go ahead back over to whatever rock you crawled out from underneath. I, as a GM, look at this as kind of part of the social contract of GMing. If I'm going to spend 4 to 5 hours entertaining a group of players, they should at least be able to provide the minimum respect to follow the tone that I'm setting. And my Mr. Johnson is a way of making sure that that doesn't happen. He's there to get a job done. He wants to make sure that he is hiring people that know what they're doing. And if this person looks like they will be a detriment to the job, he won't take them. And I might be looked at as a bad guy when I say, well, Dave, I'm sorry. I appreciate that you turned out for this game, but your character is just not suitable. So go ahead, take yourself a karma, and have a nice night. Remove from call. You know, that's just me, I guess.
That's
Moving on.
not necessarily just
Not just
you.
you.
Um, the Creed before their unfortunate demise was of a very similar mind, and there should be a little bit of that in the Shadowrun world as a whole. Remember, you are playing professional criminals who do terrible things for large sums of money. It's not too hard to make a jump that if somebody is standing between you and your large piles of money, you're not going to take too kindly to that. This also goes for Johnson's because, like with Kat's mention of his Johnson, who is an in-between, if the players screw up the run, well, he might not be getting the money that he was hired, and he will lose the face and street cred that he had, which would then give him reason to do bad things to the runners. Um, the but that is like chances are in those situations, at least immediately, um, the players have already been penalized by however the run went wrong. Like maybe they had to burn edge to not be captured in some fashion. Maybe they had to give up some piece of gear. So then doubling up on that by having the Johnsons hired goons that he was at the meeting with when they go to meet up to do things, attack them, might be seen as a bit of a dick move. You can, however, just roll it back to maybe blacklisting them, and if they ever apply to one of your jobs, from that fixer, maybe make a little icy comment to them in the
Based on your previous performance, we do not feel that you are a suitable applicant for this job. Pow.
yeah.
Sorry.
I do have another thing to talk about with types of Johnsons involving run rewards, but if you guys don't want to move on to that yet, we can totally wait.
No, go ahead. We are still on the Johnson part, and you have the floor.
Excellent. So one of the things that's a little odd about the hub is some of the reward inflation that has kind of happened. Um, the average run payout of like 10,000 new yen and a couple of karma, it's up to like 15,000. That's a lot of money. It quickly, I don't want to say overpowers characters, but accelerates characters. The fact that I have a character that has been alive for a year, well, he's dead now, but he lived for a year. He had 220 karma, and when he died, he was on full beta wear, and 130,000 new yen in his pocket is a lot of money. Um, Granted, everybody likes to advance their character, but there are other ways that you can pay them out. Street cred is a great way of doing that. Um, it doesn't really do a whole lot for them, but at the same time, it can be Pavlovian again. It's like, oh, we did a really good job, and the Shadow community now knows a little bit like that we are capable of doing this. Having a run in mind where the Johnson puts them in contact with somebody else, kind of like Kat's Johnson, where he's doing work for other people, and then having that person intending to be a contact can be another great way. A lower rewards job that has other versions of payment. I've done this two different ways. I had a run one time with Larry Fourfingers, who was a giant sleazeball, and maybe my second most well-known Johnson after Mama. But he wanted to get people into a Christmas party for criminals where they can meet and greet and exchange work information and that kind of thing. The job itself paid out really low because the intention was I'm going to get a group of Shadowrunners into a social situation with a bunch of other criminals, and there can really be any kind of criminal here. The intention was they're going to break off from the group at different times, babysitting their charge. I'm going to go over there and talk to that guy who they say is an arms dealer, and we're going to swap business cards. And then I will pick him up as a contact at the end of the run. That guy over there, he's a smuggler. He looks like a pirate with a giant bushy beard, and he's got a bunch of wenches on his arm. I'm going to go talk to that guy because I could use a smuggler contact. This lady in the bathroom who's selling drugs, like as you do in those fancy bathrooms where they have people there that'll offer you towels and stuff. There's a drug connection. Different things
I
like
need to
that,
go to those parties, I think.
right?
I know.
Um, so the run payout was designed in mind with a decent amount of karma because it was kind of just a fun themed run. The contact was there, and then a little bit of Nuyen just to kind of fit. Um, the other one I did was these two guys who were thieves, and they do. This was my first Christmas run that I was going to make into a meta plot, and then I got Fallout 4. Oops. Um, they don't have a lot of money. However, they were willing to pay the runners with some of their haul. They had a yes, that was Ballroom Blitz for Twitch chat. Um, the idea was, all right, I'm going to pay you like 5,000 Nuyen, and when the runners asked for more, the two guys were like, "What do we do? We don't have any more money." So they offered them up to 10,000 Nuyen worth of electronics. Some of the runners picked up Fly Spy, some of them picked up nicer comm links, some of them picked up other stuff that, while not necessarily like, oh my god, I got a whatever, but picking up a Farlight Caliban sort of for free, not bad. Having a Firewall 7 comlink, pretty good. Picking up a couple of Fly Spies, um, without having to do available rolls. Granted, they're kind of easy to find. Um, kind of helps. Gives you different methods of payment that may be more relevant to the type of Johnson you're using. Especially because from the Johnson's point of view, if I am a Ares mid-level executive that oversees a couple of weapons worlds, and I don't want the Nuyen transfer to show up in my fiscal report, but I can arrange to have a couple of crates of some kind of weapon go missing, I will not only get reimbursed from that, but I will also be out less from a Nuyen investment because they're not going to pay book price for it. Um, and the runners will get a couple of pistols, a laser pistol. Sorry, let me amend that. Maybe just some ammo, but they'll get things that they need that the Johnson works out better for paying in that form with.
Yes, yeah, there are other people on this call.
Yeah. Um, One of the things that I like doing also is occasionally giving alternate means of payment as a fluff thing. It all works out to be Nuyen, but it is in a different format. Like my professional Johnson that I mentioned earlier always pays people in uncut diamonds because uncut diamonds are really hard to trace. Nuyen is Nuyen, but it leaves a digital trail. Whereas if I have connections within the diamond industry, I can pay people with shiny rocks. I have paid people with UCAS dollars, which is always fun because it's at 2 times the Nuyen rate. So you tell people they're getting paid 30,000 30,000 for this job, they get all excited, and it's actually like 15,000 because you're paying them in UCAS dollars. You give them half up front because who has not wanted to be in that action film when they're handed a briefcase full of cash or a duffel bag with money stuffed in it as a reward? You know, the other thing fun about that is now they have all this physical currency that they have to figure out what to do with because now they've got this duffel bag of cash. Where are you going to put it at? You know, they start getting a little bit paranoid about how to handle their money in that respect. But that's really all I have on that topic. If anybody has
To
anything else,
follow up on what Kat just said there, remember that it's not a gotcha. It's not ha ha. I paid you in diamonds. You're screwed. Most fixers, you could call up your fixer and be like, "Yo, I need a guy that can move some stones for me."
yeah,
And
it works out to be cash either way.
Right.
It's like I had the first time I tried to pay people in diamonds, they got really super excited about it. They're like, "Oh, I've got Kyoko. I can give these to Kyoko, and she's got these special rules, or she's going to give me 15% more." It's like, dude, one, I'm not going to have your fixer charge you money to give you your money. Conversely, I'm not going to have somebody give you more money for your money. You're just getting your money. But yeah,
Right.
sorry. I wanted to switch back to the topic that somebody made a comment and I want to address it where they said, "Great, now we're gonna have talking rats as our Johnsons." This is something that is kind of important to me as like the new TD lore person is that people try to keep their games within reason for the world. And you can be funny with your game. There's no reason for you to feel that you have to be totally super grimdark all the time. But conversely, you there's the understanding that you can't go completely out into wacky zany land just because you're sitting in the GM chair. Like if you thought that maybe it would be funny for the team to be rescuing Francis the Talking Mule, maybe you might want to rethink that because there's no such thing as talking mules in the game. And yes, I do realize that there are equine shifters, but they can't speak when they're. Well, I understand that you're talking about Ratatouille, but it uh it does transition to this topic of GMs needing to make their games fit within canon. I mean, just because you are running in like some other country doesn't mean that you can throw reality out of the window. You know, you should not have your games silly for silly's sake
Right.
because that kind of cheapens the world. And that, in my opinion, anyway, on that
Right.
is the more silly runs that you have or that the hub has, the less serious that people will take us as a venue for Shadowrun because Shadowrun has some expectations. You'll be playing in a dystopic future where you're playing criminals, professional criminals trying to do high stake heists. Whereas if your run always involves unicorns and explosions and talking rats, then it cheapens the whole, in my opinion. I may be alone in that, but I have two other people here who can talk about that.
Right. And you're not. Absurdity for absurdity's sake is something I did kind of want to touch on, and this is the part where Oz gets in trouble again.
well, in that case, I'll just
The
cut him off right there at the top.
right.
Um,
Oops.
the hub is a unique situation because it is not your game. It is our game, and this is a conversation that comes up fairly often in approving characters. In that, yes, at your home table, it may be really cool that your character is estranged from their father for 10 years, who is a billionaire mastermind that assassinates people with magical cats. But that's a little ridiculous. And we ask people to rein that kind of shit in. Because frankly, it's ridiculous. Um, the same thing goes with GMs and the runs that they are doing. I did a fairly ridiculous run where Butch needed help winning a Battle of the Bands. I did it in California, and feel free to comment on whether or not you felt that was Shadowrunny.
Um, it pushed the bounds, I think, of what is Shadowrunning, but in the end, you had a metal band that it was Crucible is absurd. It is built to be absurd. It is absurd to think that these guys could actually be effective Shadowrunners, and yet they have skills that complement shadowy work. They are underhanded. They're dirty. They are not afraid to abuse the system in order to become the greatest metal band that you've never heard of. And so, in the end, yeah, it was metal as fuck. We were summoning spirits to make awesome stages. We essentially did an XP of the Great Ghost Dance to summon the very spirit of metal. So when a giant 40-foot tall glowing Ozzy Osbourne appears and gives you the horns, you know you've done well. And yeah, Cal Free is fucking weird.
I want to talk on that real quick before we move
Sure.
on. Is people have this notion that Cal Free is fucking weird, and Cal Free isn't. I don't know why people have this idea that Cal Free. Well, I have a belief why they believe that, but I don't want to point fingers. Um, Cal Free is no different than anywhere else. It's not that you could go there and pull off wacky zany adventures because they're always looking for wacky zany adventures. It's no different than anywhere else. It's California. Yeah, Hollywood is out there, but if you're loud and obnoxious in California, you're going to get just as quickly arrested as anywhere else. It's not like they overlook crazy, super goofy, Shadowrunners. And see, it's a misunderstanding in the lore. Well, not really misunderstanding in the lore, misunderstanding in the hub. That whatever happens in Cal Free stays in Cal Free. It's not really like that. I mean, just because you're in another quote country doesn't mean that reality doesn't affect you. And Shadowrun in California Free State is not Shadowrunning in My Little Pony universe, where you can just be wacky crazy and everything's hunky dory, because it's another sprawl just like any other. You know, uh, just saying. That's all I have on that subject. But
I will say that yeah, Cal Free LA, you've got runners who are recording their runs, but at the same time, those guys are smart enough to scrub ahead, or they're 30, 45 seconds ahead. So when people are and they're scrubbing, identifying marks. So when the camera comes on and they're looking at P2.1 and they're seeing this MCT facility, they're not intentionally shooting themselves in the foot when the zero zone clicks over and sees, oh hey, that's Larry in accounting. Come on, let's send a squad of HRT down there to wax these fools.
all right.
There's a difference between being a little bit absurd and being pink mohawk and being like we say brown romper suit. And a lot of the times these terms are kind of getting conflated and confused because pink mohawk, it's the tactical rolling in, doing burst fires and dynamic entries and stuff. It's hitting hard, hitting fast, getting out, and bullets are flying. Whereas the black trench coat is this, it's being handy with steel. It's being slick. It's picking pockets and running long cons.
Mm-hmm.
So both of those have their place in LA, and I would even say that in Cal Free, going that pink mohawk is still going to get you in serious trouble with HDR.
That seems to be a problem. That, like you were saying, I think people misunderstand what pink mohawk means.
Right.
Is they think that it has to be goofy, crazy, ha 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 explosions, and that's not really pink mohawk. That's its own special little brand of wackadoodle. Pink mohawk. A good pink mohawk movie is Smoking Aces,
I was going to bring that up.
where they go in loud. They go in. It's messy. Like the three brothers that just go in with like chainsaws and machine guns and stuff like that in the middle of a heist. And people bringing out sniper rifles to blow secret agents away from across the town, across buildings. That's Pink Mohawk. You know,
At the same time, though, in that movie, those brothers did track down a um somebody that had an invite to get in there and took it from them.
right.
So they still did like legwork. They didn't just kick in the door, that kind of thing. Um, One of the things I wanted to get back into about absurdity for absurdity's sake, where I intentionally cut off Oz, is just like with the character generation absurdity, the run absurdity is the same thing. We are trying, since we are a large community, we are trying to keep to what is classic Shadowrun. Classic Shadowrun, one of the first rules is never deal with a dragon. So things like dragons and that kind of stuff that come up in TD, we're like, nope, we're not trying to involve Harlequin, big name anybody from any of the lore, because that is a whole crazy kettle of fish that is a power level that we really don't want to concern ourselves with. For a home game, go crazy. Go run all of the previous Harlequin missions in a 5th edition setting or whatever setting you want to play. You want to involve stuff from Dunkelzahn's Will and a stolen dragon egg and a hangout in the middle of nowhere and a all that other ridiculousness. You probably shouldn't. This is probably not the situation for that. Just like this is probably not the situation for your, you know, super crazy out there characters. Which is why
Right.
we ban a lot of certain qualities, because no thank you.
Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah,
Um,
no, we don't need a quality that gives people karma to ruin runs.
yeah. The question was asked is what is a better way to ask Mr. Johnson for more money than just asking them for more cash? Um, be more oblique about it. You don't say, hey, dude, I need more money. Just say, like for example, if the job is, I need you guys to do this within 3 days, say, well, we appreciate that you need to do this on such short notice, but given that we have limited time to act, we're going to need more upfront money at the beginning of this run. We need more of a slush fund to work with because we're going to need to offer more extensive bribes to ensure that your job doesn't get, you know, isn't revealed to other people. We need to ensure the OPSEC here.
Right.
Or you can say, well, clearly you're sending us against a multinational corporation. They're going to have a lot of resources to throw against us, and while 15,000 million is a generous payday for this, we feel that the situation that we're going to go into requires a little more investment in our part, and therefore we feel that you could perhaps compensate us for the extra resources we're going to have to provide for this run. Or as I did with my character 10, I sat down and described exactly how much it cost for me to fire my minigun per combat turn and asked him could he reimburse me for that kind of ammunition.
The um, there are two things I have in mind off the top of my head on this situation. One is Johnson's never offer what they're going to pay. Like the more professional Johnson, the less a chance that he is going to offer what he is willing to pay for the job, because he knows, one, runners are going to always ask for more money because they're greedy assholes. Two, his bottom line, if he can get the job done for cheaper, then he's going to pay less. There was a thing I was listening to on the radio today. I live near Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Eagles have a bit of a coaching change going on, and their quarterback, who is ranked 26th out of 32 in the league, asked them for $25 million for a year. It's an opening shot.
Fuck that guy.
Exactly. There's no way he is a quarterback that is worth that much money. And that's basically what runners are going to do. The Johnson's going to be like, I'll pay you $6,000. The runner's
But
going to
yeah,
be like, we want 15. And then it'll kind of within the dice roll, it will come out to how it actually worked out. Go ahead,
the
Kat.
question though is asking how to ask for more cash. You might ask another thing is like, if we're able to pull this off, quietly, with minimal damage to whatever they're clearly wanting you to take care of. Like, for example, if you're supposed to be going into a corporate facility, if we're able to do this quietly without leaving traces, can we get a bonus for this job? And then that would leave it, as opposed to asking for more money up front, this is asking for a bonus for, a tip. We've done a outstanding job. Can we get a little bit more money at the end if we do go above
That
and beyond?
was that was going to be the second thing that I was talking about, because a
Sorry.
certain
It's all
socially.
right. I've been interrupted here for like 20 minutes. I'm just waiting.
Oh, well, in that case, go ahead, Oz.
Well, thank you, Rob.
So what I was saying was,
Shut up.
Right. I knew that was coming.
I didn't want to disappoint you.
I know, and you don't. Um, Honestly, I think just come out and ask for more money. If you think that sneaking into a corporate facility and doing a data steal and making it back out to do the handoff isn't worth $15,000, then you say that I'm not. We're not getting out of bed for anything less than 25K, because the Johnson he's setting the floor, and it's up to the runners. And he doesn't try to set the ceiling too, but he sets the floor. That's the opening bid, that's the floor. This is the minimum that he's going to pay. So if he says, yeah, I will give you $15,000 to do this, and now it's up to you to set the ceiling and be like, all right, well, if I've got to do these bribes, get all this stuff, do all these things, and we're doing it, on a rush job costs extra. AAA security, that costs extra. Um, can't use all our cool toys, that costs a lot extra, because whatever that you don't have as equipment, that's turned into money that you're going to have to spend in bribes and whatever else. So he sets the floor. You are working on setting the ceiling now, and honestly, the ceiling is going to be where the agreement is made. So he says 10, you say 30. You're probably going to work down to about 18 to 20, and you're going to be happy because you're getting paid a bunch more. His budget he's still way under budget, and that's the thing I wanted to add on that Rob said is, if he can get it done for less, he's gonna, because he's keeping that money. He's had his bosses or whatever have given him, it's like, here's the budget, here's 100,000 nuyen, I need this done, and he's gonna say, okay, no problem, and he's gonna turn to the fixer and says, I've got 40,000 nuyen to get this done. Give me 4 to 5 jerkwads who are going to give me monkeys to feed these peanuts to. And that's going to turn around and bite him in the ass later, quite possibly. But a good face is going to look at that and say, all right, that's peanuts. I know how this works. Yeah, you're offering me 40. I know your budget's at least 60 to 80. And yeah, you have been underpaid a lot before. We kind of, as thematics division and former EB, I can guarantee you that we are underpaying you, because I get to keep that money. Well, not me, but my Johnson does.
All right. Well, we've been going for about an hour and a half. I have run out of topics myself. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask us? Or any of us have any topics we'd like to cover that we haven't gone through yet?
I've been killing brain cells a lot tonight because I've had these ideas that keep falling out, and I'm going to blame Oz because he just demanded to have to speak there at the end.
Well, you did interrupt me because I was going to do the absurdity for absurdity's sake.
Oh, that's right. You were going to go down a. I interrupted you for the.
I was actually going to get into trouble, but
yes,
since the
for your own good.
There was no point. It's okay. I'll save that one for later.
That's fine. Let me see. Ooh, HMHPV on. So there is a couple of issues with HMHPV. One is we don't allow anything that is not a ghoul on the hub as a player character. So that is issue number one. So infection for things that are not ghouls, just throw raid out.
Yeah, because that's pretty much a demand for retirement.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same thing with CFD.
So in that situation with non-ghouls, it's like Sure, go ahead and use it because their main threat of the infection is not something you have to worry about. However, if you are intending um, to use ghouls in a potentially, and you want the threat of infection to be there, put it straight up in your job description about how, like, out of character, at the very least, drastic character changes are potentially possible here. And then in the situation where it comes up, talk to the player out of character about it. It's like, is this a path that you want to explore with your character? And if they say no, then they don't get infected.
Yeah.
It's
So that's a hell of a thing to drop on somebody. As somebody that has played a ghoul, that there's a whole lot of changes that are going to happen to that PC, and maybe the player is not comfortable with the way it is going to work out, for their character.
I I did this once where I was exposing characters to a ridiculously high magic situation. Um, I mentioned that the probability of being changed into a changeling was fairly high, and that I didn't want to see the characters that this happened to, because it's happened to a couple of characters on different runs for different situations and such. I didn't want to see the character just disappear a couple of months later because you didn't want to art like that is a serious character changing thing,
Yeah,
just like
like you got
infection.
duck feathers and a bill.
Yeah, like it's bad times. I don't want to see you be like, oh well, my character's. Oh, that's something we can talk about. Oh, my character is ruined, so I'm just gonna throw him away and make their brother. Um, if the player is into being infected and can handle that with the maturity required, um, which would also go into who you pick for that run. You would want to pick players that can handle that kind of thing well, and not just be like, well, I gotta eat people now. Um,
Yeah.
I had a player from a game that I played that had the burn edge to survive falling from a building. The GM gave him a phobia, fear of heights, and he made the mostly in character comments like, "Oh, guys, I think I'm afraid of heights now." It's like, um, as for mechanically, if they get infected, that would kind of come up to a TD type situation. I at the very least imagine a bunch of karmic debt to pay for the 60 some karma it would take post gen to be turned into a ghoul.
Mm-hmm.
And then, depending upon the situation, it would um, maybe some other things, like maybe all of a sudden certain contacts dry up or certain relevant qualities go away.
Right.
Oz, do you have something to contribute, or should I talk about other
No, I
huge?
can. I've got something here.
Because
In
I
in
could
the
go on
case
about
of, I know
amnesia.
you can.
Okay, go.
Um,
I don't want to interrupt you anymore. Stop
sure.
letting me interrupt you.
Well then,
Kill you
mic
both.
discipline, son.
Oh, I'm done.
When it comes to HMHPV, like Rob said, and like Kat said, put it in the description of the run. You know, there is the possibility that it happens, and if you are applying to the run, that is tacit approval that this might happen to your character. And for me personally, as a GM, if I'm going to use that, if you are burning edge to survive a scene during my run, that's going to be the A1 priority negative quality attributed. So if there is a ghoul warren that you've got to go through and you decide to start shooting at the ghouls and they swarm you and you go down and you have to burn edge to survive, you are going to wake up with a new diet plan.
Ouch.
But at the same time, maybe give them an option to burn a second edge to not get infected.
Possibly. I do like my burned edge. Um, and that is not beyond the realm of possibility. But I've always been a huge fan of actions have consequences, and if you are silly enough to start shooting at ghouls when they're leaving you alone, then I think you need to walk a mile in their shoes. And that's all I have to say on that particular part. So you may continue with what you were saying.
Um,
Without interruption for either one of you. All right.
I hate you guys so much.
Mic discipline.
Right? Super important. But now we're all doing it intentionally, so it's become a
Yeah, go ahead.
for grandiose character changes, things like infection or surge, or I had a actual example of this when Tapper died and got amnesia. There are certain qualities that suddenly become no longer relevant. So her emotional attachment, her prejudice, her personality related things are gone. Similarly, if you are turned into a ghoul and you previously had a food allergy to something like seafood or soy or really much of anything, that's also going to go because you don't eat that stuff anymore. Um, so in that situation, you're probably going to be out a little bit more karma. Um, certain other, I'm trying to think of other relevant negative qualities that might have to be bought off. You guys got anything off the top of your head?
Sins.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Um, there are sins that could potentially, like, rating 5 and 6 sins, I would maybe bump down to like rating 4 sins because this this doesn't say that you're a ghoul on it. So
Well, as Gwen said, there is the carrier quality also, and that is true.
yeah, but the carrier quality is not going to do anything.
Right. It is toothless as a quality, unless that character is like, oh, I know I'm a carrier. I'm gonna start fucking up some runners. It
Right.
doesn't really do anything for us.
Right.
So, Captain Trout, you guys, what if the player does not have the karma or GMP to pay for them? What then? Then you go into karmic debt, and you no longer gain karma until that debt is paid off. But that would be where TD, because nobody is really going to carry around 60 karma unspent. Like, that's a bit crazy. Unless they're insane and have a bunch of banked up GMP, but in that situation, that is where like TD would get involved to help resolve the specifics of it. The same with their negative and potentially even some of their positive qualities. Like if you have a mentor spirit and suddenly you are infected, there might be a little bit of unhappiness dependent upon your mentor spirit. Like if it's a peace and love hippy dippy one, it might not be too happy with your consume all humans.
That works for me.
Yep.
Any other things? It's looking like no.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, yeah.
There's been being racist now.
So that actually gives me a brief idea of something we could talk about because it comes up on both sides of the thing.
All right.
Personally, racism is one of my favorite things in Shadowrun.
Uh-huh.
It works both ways. Like if you are an orc and your team is trying to get into this place, and you get yourself a pair of overalls and or Nereus Industrious to put a game term on it, and you infiltrate the place dressed as a package carrier whose job is to move box from shelf 1 to shelf A back and forth, and that's your job to do all day because you're a dumb orc and you're there to lift heavy things. You can use that to your advantage to come in there and increase your cover because chances are those people are not going to expect orcs to be all that intelligent. Similarly, sometimes I feel like driving while Trog gets thrown around a little too much.
That is a topic I want to go on. Go ahead.
So, see, it has to go in with the racism thing.
Done?
Well, I'm kind of done unless you guys have something to say on the topic of using racism to facilitate various aspects of things.
Have one after that, though.
I personally don't. I don't use it a lot simply because yeah, there's some guys going to say, oh yeah, well trogs and yabos have their place, and I do love talking down to the dandelion eaters, but in the end, it is going to be the way the character handles themselves that ingratiates themselves into that situation.
This is true, but it is also fairly relevant for certain other things. Like, I believe Renraku is the big racist Japanicorp.
MCT.
How is it? Okay. Apologies.
Runraku's hugely pro AI now in 6.0.
Um, so it's going to come up in some of your runs against them because if it's like, uh, you have a team of elves, dwarves, orcs, and trolls, and they are preliminary, no, primarily humans, it's going to change the way you go about the run because your options for social infiltration are pretty much axed because you're not human. So what are you doing here? Um, it works the other way with, as Ultralord mentions, the Orc Underground. It works in other places as well. That is an additional modifier that can come in to influence the way you guys are going to do things. Like in a physical intimidation situation, if somebody is a troll, I usually give them extra dice because you're a giant troll. And I know Cat had something else, unless Oz wants to air quote rebut my racism is good.
No, I'm going to go ahead and let you throw yourself on that sword.
All right, so one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of the older players, characters, GMs on the hub have developed sort of we're a community, so slang is going to come about and jokes are going to become common. And one of the problems that I see is when people look at these things and do not understand that they are just throwaway jokes. Like, for example, the Shadowrunner special being the sleeping tiger. Ha ha ha. Everybody's like, you'll see people that have their characters wearing a sleeping tiger, and GMs are like, oh, well, the security guard comes up and asks you, what are you doing here? Because you're wearing the Shadowrunner special. That's not really a thing. That's a joke that a player has made that has caught on. And while driving Wild Trog is a funny way of putting it, it's not necessarily that you have to have the police stop every orc and every troll because you are driving Wild Trog. Um, these are things that while they seem like they are a part of the lingo, I'm sorry, I'm killing things. Um, while they're part of the
It's a good
lingo,
thing.
they're not a point of fact. So don't take stuff like that seriously because a sleeping tiger is just a fancy suit. You know, an orc
Right.
is just a smelly person.
Unless
It,
he's
it
got tailored pheromones.
it's canon. It is canon. They stink. That's part of the reduction is that they smell funny.
Right. That's exactly what Kat's talking about right there. Is there should be no reason you avoid sleeping tiger like the plague, because its reputation is only as bad as the people who wear it. And yeah, I mean the sleeping tiger plus the long coat is gives you as good an armor soak pool as a suit of full body armor while being 100% legal. So it's definitely got its place. I personally don't take sleeping tiger because I feel that everybody takes it. So I like that. That is my special snowflake moment. I never take the sleeping tiger as a suit. I will go with a reflavored Berwick or a Synergist business line. I will get my social armor.
Right.
Um,
The executive
and in the
suite is a
case,
great choice
right,
because it's 2,000 new yen and super cheap.
right. And then for driving while Trog, I play Stamp. He is an orc, and he is one of the smelliest of orcs because he is Charisma 2 and Strength 11. So he is he's going to be pulled over and searched all the time, but he's an ex Scratcha who is a current ganger with the Hellions, who is somewhat well known in the city of Seattle for being a bunch of fucking troublemakers, and he is also an internationally wanted terrorist. So it makes sense for him to be stopped on the regular because he doesn't hide what he is. He is a walking decoy. He's rolling up on a Harley Scorpion wearing gang colors with a gang tag on his back, and Katie's going to take one look at him and be like, "All right, what are you carrying? What are
Right.
your intentions?" But for an orc wearing a business suit, yeah, he shouldn't be getting hassled. He should just be kind of fitting in, especially if somebody like Stamp is coming along. Everybody's going to focus on him, which means that everybody else is going to get through that checkpoint just fine. But that's also why I built him, so he doesn't actually have to carry a weapon.
And you
And
were asked. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead. No, I'm good. I'm done.
He was asking about the Dodge Scoot. How do we feel about the Dodge Scoot? Well, the Dodge Scoot is 4 handling and 3 speed, whereas the Ford Americar is 4 handling, 3 speed. So I've never felt the need to make somebody feel like an idiot because they can only afford a Dodge Scoot in character generation, or that's their intention to drive a Dodge Scoot. Because whereas, and yes, of course, in the fluff it says that no self-respecting Shadowrunner will ever be caught on a Dodge Scoot. Conveniently, in that aspect, that most people are going to look at you on a Dodge Scoot and think, well, he can't be a criminal because he's driving a Scoot.
That's why
Right.
the Americar is the best car, because there's a
I
million of them.
we say in OC chat all the time, Dodge Scoot Master Race, and some people mean that as a joke. I don't. The Scoot is it's as ubiquitous as Ford Americar, best Americar 25 year, because everybody's got one, which means that the eye just slides over it. You look at Shadowrunners who've got a flashy car. Like if you see somebody roll up in a Bentley Concordat, you're going to pay attention to them.
Mm-hmm.
They roll up in a years out Xinjiang, you're going to pay attention to them. They roll up in a nice guy, yeah, you're paying attention to them. And as a Shadowrunner, that's not what you want. So if somebody comes up in a beat up Americar, you're not going to pay him any attention. It's not worth your time. Literally not worth KE's time to look at every Americar that comes through.
Or a
The nail that
jackrabbit.
sticks out, yeah, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. But that's also why Stamp is going to get that fully modded out GMC Phoenix with years out 4, because he is playing into his role as a very visible decoy. Because everybody else is going to get through with no problems if he's sitting there in line.
All right. So the question came up is, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, that one we get to. We
Well,
can.
we'll handle the Hellions next. We'll start with the question of how do we handle assumed competence. Assumed competency is kind of a sticky situation for me as a GM because I have been on the receiving end as a player of the bad use of it. Whereas one of my characters was the plot for another player trying to PK them. And it was like, I put a bomb under their seat. And it's like, oh, okay, the GM handles all this. And then my character detected the bomb. And he's like, there's no way they could have detected that bomb because I have it in a hermetically sealed package. There's no reason why I wouldn't buy it in a hermetically sealed package because assume competency. Assume competency can only protect you for so long. I mean, my opinion is personally that assume competency is always trumped by actual competency. Um, there's only so much that I feel a GM should give to a player. I'm not going to ask somebody, did you lock your front door when you went on the run? Ha ha! You didn't say you locked your door. Your neighbor went and he stole all of your cream cheese. What are you going to do now? You know,
Buy
that
more
that
cream cheese.
stupid little fiddly shit that assumed competency should cover. I mean, assume competency is, yes, you get out of your car and you set your alarm. Assume competency is, yes, you brought ammunition for your gun. Assume competency is, you know you can't throw your grenade because you just pulled the pin and you're in a very small room. You wouldn't pull the pin. But assume competency is not going to be a protect all from fail. Like you can't say, oh, yeah, I'm shaking her hand and I'm wearing 4 pairs of gloves because that's what I always wear whenever I shake somebody's hand. That's stretching things a little bit too far to protect you. You know. Yeah, your comlinks are broadcasting your sin. I assume that you're running silent on everything except your legitimate sin, because that's what a common sense approach would be. But you should not always use assume competency to be a blanket statement of, oh, I did something terribly stupid, but my character wouldn't make that mistake. Yeah, there's some things that your character would know that you wouldn't know. Like, for example, I'm anything over 10, I take my shoes off, whereas my character has a logic of 8. They can do long math. It's assumed competency in that respect. But I can't expect the GM to protect me if I decided that, yeah, my grenades are wireless. It's like, oh yeah,
Right.
assumed competency. I'd have switched those off. You
Um,
know?
to answer some of the specific questions here, things like wearing your ballistic mask. If you are, I assume it's like payday. When you begin to do super illegal shit, you've put your mask on. Like, it only makes sense that I'm now at the point of the run where I'm going in this building. I'm rolling sneak rolls to not be seen. I'm going to be probably wearing my mask unless my intention is to make contact with somebody. Um, but even in that situation, as long as it's not a high pressure situation, you would probably then just take your mask off as you walk in the door. It's one of those things that it's like that situation, yeah. Something like scrubbing signatures, where in a higher threat situation, like a combat situation, that's going to take you a significant amount of time to scrub your signature. Um, as such, if you don't say you're doing it while you guys are running away, then if that KE spirit shows up and begins to kind of look at things, well, then that gets a little bit more complicated. Um, I'm
Right.
also of the mind assumed competency will depend upon the threat level of the run,
Mm.
because I will hand wave and ignore a bunch of shit because we are all, not, I hope we are all not professional criminals. But
Maybe
when
you're
we get
not.
it to the super higher threat runs, part of that threat comes from things like which center you're broadcasting right now, or that kind of thing. Because if you have, let's say you have a rating 2, a rating 4, and a rating 6 in, it's very important to know when going into a double A zone, which one of those are you flying? Because should things go wrong, I need to know who to come down on. Is it your
Right.
2, your 3, your 2, your 4, your 6?
Yeah.
Um, there was a quick thing about Edge refreshing back in there. Um, I don't think I've ever had Edge given back to me as a player from a GM, and I know I have never given it out to players as a GM. Um, one,
I have seen it given out. I know Pulse has done that. If he is especially entertained, but if as a player, if you were going to ask if you could have Edge refresh for cool stuff, I think as a GM, I mean, we forget shit all the time. So if it was like, hey, that was pretty cool. You think I could get an Edge out of that? I'd be inclined to say, yeah, why not? If it was, and I think that's what the question was.
Mhm.
the I as a GM am much more likely to give you bonus dice for something than I am to refresh an edge. I like to look at it as edge as a resource, and when planning a high stakes thievery action, you want all your resources to be very accurately accounted for. So
Yes.
if you're rolling a 2 edge character and you just do ridiculous shit because you're like, all right, I got to do something crazy to get edge back, you're one potentially going to ruin the theme of the run because you will attempt to use 3 grapple guns to Spider-Man through the building and hang yourself from the roof to take that sniper shot, and that's not exactly what the run is about. Whereas if I can give you bonus dice to various actions you do, that keeps you still in the theme of the run, and I can do it more consistently. Like over the course of the night, if I give back 1 or 2 edge, that's not a big deal. But if I'm giving back like 8, 9, that's going to quickly escalate into a situation where the game was not designed or built from a Shadowrun perspective, not even a my specific game perspective to handle.
And the way I handle it is that I look at how bad the team is hurting for edge. I mean, if everybody's been spinning edge left and right, and somebody does something cool and says, "Hey, can I get edge back?" I'm like, "Yeah, you guys have been getting hit pretty hard, and that was pretty cool. So yeah, take an edge back." Yeah, that's the way I handle it, at least.
Yeah, it ends up being GM prerogative.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if they're also using their edge on things like knowledge skills or
Well, you dumb shit, yeah, then absolutely not. But again,
Right.
that's
well,
GM prerogative.
then again, that depends upon the run because if this is a run that can be done with a lot of um, that can be done more through knowledge skills and that kind of stuff to get more important information, then maybe it's relevant. To answer your question about the Daredevil quality, uh, there has been a grand total of, I believe, 1 character, maybe 2 on the hub that has taken that quality. It is one of the qualities that, as a C2CD thing, if people take it, we're like, just so you're aware, this doesn't happen super often. You are still more than welcome to take it and encouraged to take it if it fits the flavor of the character you are trying to
Great.
play. But we want you to be forewarned. There's a couple of other things that fall under that, things like archery and alchemy and that kind of stuff. It's like it's cool for you to play, but we just want to make sure you know what you're getting into, so that you don't come back to us and be like, "Yo, guys, I wasted karma on this and I didn't get a heads up."
Right.
So, as we covered that, somebody earlier asked about gangs and the Hellions. Um, as far as gang goes, I find generally that at least hanging out on IRC, you'll see a lot of people like, yeah, I'm just hanging out on a rooftop out in Redmond and I'm shooting these dirty gangers. No big deal. Light gangers are kobolds in D&D. Gangs are actually people, and they should be considered as much a threat as a corporate security group is because their survival of the fittest. These are not just like the worst of the worst. These are the toughest gangers in the sprawl that have managed to survive the mean streets of Seattle and become what they are. Um, as for the Hellions were a group that I created in a podcast, and when the hub was early on in its infancy, I ported a lot of the stuff that I brought over in the form of Molly Mayhem. Um, as for their gang, I don't feel that players should especially be afraid of the Hellions because generally speaking, the major threat, quote unquote, are the PC elements of it. There's like 30 members of the Hellions, but only what four four PCs?
Stamp, Johnny Blaze,
Katie and
Plink's retired, so I
oh,
think
so
that's
there's
it.
only three of them. So yeah, I mean, there's no reason that players should be afraid of the Hellions as a whole because they're just another gang. But the way they face the quote named individuals is the way that they would treat any other runner. I mean, if you're impressed by their reputation, then be impressed by their reputation. If you think they're all hype, then they're all hype. I mean, there's no set reason why you should treat them any differently than you would any other gang just because their members are happen to be Shadowrunners, few Shadowrunners in the group.
Right, but at the same time, they're not just pushovers. Because going back to the Kobold thing, we've had runners who'd be like, oh well, I'm just gonna fly a dozen explosive drones into their main bar. It's like, well, think about that. If you do that to something like the Halloweeners, then they're gonna hop on their bikes and they're gonna come after you screaming with chains out and submachine guns. The Hellions are no different. Just because they're PCs and we've got some PvP rules in place, it doesn't mean that we can't PvP. And if you're going to make an overt move like that, we're going to consider it's open season. And then you've got seasoned Shadowrunners who are also happen to be gangbangers coming down on you like the fist of an angry god.
I hope that answers any of the questions. If it did not, please ask for clarification, because like I said, the Hellions are my creation, and I don't want to feel that people feel like they have to react to the broader group of them in any specific way. Because I mean, gangers are people and gangers are threats, but you know, the game is all about the PCs, in
Right.
my opinion. So there's no reason that somebody should feel that their experience is diminished because another's exists. I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. Forgive my lack of eloquence. Um,
There's
but yeah,
a certain stigma, like you mentioned about the Hellions' reputation and stuff. I was it was an interesting social dynamic and an actual representation of the street cred, notoriety, public awareness type situation that Shadowrun has. Is you were talking about the Hellions and their reputation. Omni and Creed had a reputation as being a ridiculous murder hobo, but at the same time had no bad rep, had zero notoriety, and got that because that was the conception people had about them. It works the same way for the Hellions, where people have this conception that, oh my god, there's some ridiculous gang that's unstoppable, and that's not exactly true. Um, I can't really think off the top of my head of anybody besides maybe the Owl that is now getting the reputation of being a crazy person because he's like, I am killing all the men's, and that's going to get him in trouble one day. Um,
Yes, yes, it is.
well, Sawthotch, feel free to express your opinion if you would like.
I would think on the subject of the Hellions, I mean, because there are PCs in the gang, and it's a custom gang, um, and it's I think more chillingly staffed mostly by moderators, PC characters. Um, there's probably a little bit of a stigma there, but that's also why we don't swing our weight around with it as much as.
well, beyond the moderator part, I want to say the lowest karma Hellion was 200 or so now.
I think Stamps hit 210.
Oh,
Katie's 250, 239.
yeah, so
Yeah, but that's because you bastards get games all the time.
any group
Sorry.
that is any group of runners that is 200ish karma is going to be a terrifying group. Like that's a lot. Um, Captain Tryhard asks, he's been of the general perception that gangers are not the Hellions are not as dangerous. So danger comes in many forms, and for those of you who are not aware, Oz, would you like to tell the story of Neil?
Yes, I will tell the story of Neil because it is one of my favorite stories. So Neil T. Man, was a nameless rating 2 NPC on a snatch and grab, and the team completely cocked up the run, and so they were throwing flashbangs at him. They were trying to shoot him in the face, and he's just shrugged it all off. Like, he's throwing like 12 dice to soak and he's getting 10 successes like all the freaking time. And so because of that, he became a major threat to the team. He almost took like two people out because he just couldn't be stopped. And now he's a Johnson because he realizes how much money is in that kind of illicit activity. But another more gang centric thing is the red hot nukes Not a very large gang, but they dealt a lot in explosives. They were pretty much the source of most of the explosives on the hub. Their leader and his lieutenants were probably around a rating 7 moot team, and the team that took those guys out got lucky in that they had heavy magic and they had the right spells in order to neutralize that team, because otherwise in a straight fight these 4 guys would have wiped the floor with any 10 runners on the hub. And okay, yeah. So for a gang that numbers less than 30 people, the Red Hot Nukes were terrifying. The Halloweeners, 3 rating 1 gangers, literally rating 1, completely stopped a seasoned runner team in a 4-story building and got away without a scratch. Now, granted, they also burned the building down and sent a troll plummeting into a vat of chemicals, Joker style, which was really cool. But still, they were rating 1. The Red Hot Nuke run, I cannot even remember. I don't think Pulse wrote an AAR for it, but it was the one where Satchel was captured.
Which he will probably be back in a couple of months. Yeah, probably about 2 months, guys. He's not dead.
I still disagree with that, but okay.
We'll see what happens. He might come back changed and do completely different things, reformed from his life of blowing shit up.
Well, yeah. After Deadman fetched him an epic beating.
Right? Probably several. There was something I thought about, but I have killed that brain cell because I'm playing with a transformer. Oh, so this was to go back to the misconception of the Hellions not being like a normal ganger, but like your normal ganger when played intelligently is still a threat. Like he's probably gonna be on some kind of drug, so he'll have extra initiative dice. He will have little regard for the local area, probably so far as like stray bullets and stuff. But there's also the social aspect of things. That group of 5 guys is not the entire gang. When lead starts flying, they will call their friends, and their friends will come running. Because that is what you do when you're in a gang. Some dude is stepping to you, you step back.
And Molotov cocktails are 10 DV. Just a fun fact there.
Yeah.
Not to mention, they also have a chance of catching fire, and once stuff catches fire, shit gets crazy. I will also note the home ground quality. That is absolutely their shtick. You are on their turf, and so they know it like the backs of their hands.
And they will probably have either caches or escape routes or a reinforced building they can run back to that they know about.
Or they can go into tunnels and make it even harder with grenades, because I can tell you for a fact, Chucky Salsa is nasty.
Yep. So it's frame of mind. This is why whenever HTR is mentioned, I like to say the things that make HTR scary is not their stats. The fact that they will have full control and compliance of the building you're going after. They will have compliance of KE, locking down streets and stuff and setting up barricades and spike strips and all that other fun things. And they're not they may be the first responders, but they're not the last responders. Which is why people are like, oh, well, he only throws 14 dice to shoot me. I'm not worried about that. I've got 22 or some other dumb stuff. Like, there are so many intangibles that aren't written on their sheet that the book does not go into describing tactics and things for all of the things. Granted, it would add a lot of pages if they went into all of the different enemy types.
It would be its own splat book.
Which would be a super interesting splat book, actually, I think.
There was one. Long time ago, they had the Lone Star splat book in 2nd edition. that was very informative about how the police work.
Yeah, having something like that, because a Shadowrunner at character generation through its entire career is a match for any one other NPC, with
As
the
long as
exception
they're
of like, yeah,
the
like
same archetype, yeah.
right, and anybody on the street, a Shadowrunner can probably wipe the floor of them. But the point is a Shadowrunner works off of ambush tactics and controlling the situation. If the situation is controlled not in their favor, they are meat, and a that's what you get in a good ambush. When you turn an ambush on a Shadowrunner team, they are as much meat as the guys that they are turning into Swiss cheese any other day of the week.
One of the similar things to remember is that dude who is just the security officer, Bob Farley, who's sitting behind the desk watching computer screens. His job is not to pick up his rifle and go fight the Shadowrunners. That is not what he is paid for. The His job is observe, report, harry, slow, guerrilla tactic type stuff. You may, if you're in the command room, you will lock doors as you can. You will stop the elevator. You will turn on the sprinklers and that kind of stuff. Um, Anything you can do to slow them down, and you will be all right. They're hitting the fifth floor. All right, they're going to the sixth floor. All right, they stopped. They're in the east side of the building. That's his job. If the Shadowrunners come to him, sure, his job gets a lot more complicated as then he's then fighting for his life and not performing his job. But if the Shadowrunners back off of him, he's not going to pursue them. That does nothing but get him killed, and he knows this, and that's not his job. Um, Man, maybe we should do a write up one day of like updating some of that
Mm-hmm.
Lone Star book.
It's tempting, but
Goddamn,
as
on the
as I have
floor.
fast found out, whenever I put things to paper, magically Catalyst comes out with it like 2 months later. So
Yeah, well, um, anybody have anything else they want to ask? Because we have been going for 2 hours and 12 minutes.
Oh,
so
that's
we
true.
have.
As things continue to beep in my background.
Pregnant pauses.
No, there's a hold on. Sorry, Ultra, losing you. Static, disconnecting. About how hosts work? Oh man, hosts are a subject all in and of themselves, and thus I don't feel like we can contribute to that in this situation. The Matrix rules are a mess, as I'm sure everybody will agree with me.
Nope.
That would require an entirely other chat
Yeah.
for
I'll be happy
hosts.
to have a chat about Deckers.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Jim's, when you have a Decker on the group and you shut off the wireless of your NPCs, the Deckers often feel like there is nothing they can do. At that point, I feel that because you have negated them by switching off all the wireless, you are kind of obligated to mention things that are other options that they could do, like the aforementioned sprinklers, or running cars into people, or locking doors, or taking control of like uh, wireless fire extinguishers on the wall to create smoke. You can offer all these suggestions that give Deckers something else to do other than I brick gun number 4. Uh, but yeah.
To answer Ultra's question of best time frame for every run, there is no singular best time frame. That's just boom, done.
Yeah. I mean, we as Thematics has said, if you want a full 10 GMP for doing your run, make it last at least 3 hours, because that's an effective three-part. You've got part one, the meeting, you've got part two, the legwork, and then you've got part three, the execution. And each of that can be as little as an hour. Anything under that, it just seems like a waste of everybody's time, because they blocked all this time to do a run, and it didn't kind of execute efficiently. Now, if you got dump trucked, that's different. That's a different story.
The other aspect of things is if you're trying to do a black trench coat run, you need to give them time. Like, in order to black trench coat properly, you need a couple of days to at very least get some long matrix searches in, maybe summon in bind a spirit, maybe just make the necessary connections socially to get in there, maybe to just, oh crap, we need to kill this guy, I need to go buy me a long range sniper rifle and do that kind of stuff. Um, Time is very important to a black trench coat run. Granted, if they get it done within a day or two because they found a different way, whatever, that extra time doesn't go to waste. We are not gonna like, oh well, you took 5 days to complete this run, you can't do anything for the next 4 days on the hub, because that is just way too much bookkeeping. Um, the wired setup that you are coming across so often on the hub, it might just be a panicked response from GMs and um, not knowing how to properly deal with it. To answer Tacos, what's the best way to avoid the cops if they're already on you? It is a cheetah situation. I don't have to be faster than the cops. I have to be faster than you.
Yeah. If you're being chased by the cops and you have, honestly, you fucked up, because you're being chased by the cops, so it's clear that has happened. You cannot outrun their radio, and that is what the cops will tell you in real life. That is the same thing in the sixth world. If they've got eyes on you, that means that they're going to have spirits on you. They're going to have matrix on you. They're going to have a helicopter on you. You need to give them something else to focus on. You need to be less of a threat, or you kind of need to know when to fold them and quietly pull over and say, oh, "We're really sorry, sir. We didn't mean to."
Conversely, there are a lot of different ways to actually to handle problems like that. Like if they've got a helicopter, go under a bridge. Escaping the police is not necessarily about speed and maneuverability unless you're a rigger. Riggers can do amazing things. You should always love your rigger. Um, but to escape from the police, you have to have like pre-planning. Like for example, if you're going to do a kidnapping and you know that you're going to be extracting this person, then you want to have the throwaway van that you put them in. You also want to have the actual transport vehicle put on your escape route. So the moment that you get away from the cops and you round that corner, 3 of your team can bail out with the extractee and put them in the car that you're going to be actually taking them to the storage location, while the remaining 2 people are in the car. They're going to get a ticket for reckless driving, or maybe taken downtown to be interrogated, depending upon the GM. But the key thing is to like make sure that they have that distraction of like, okay, well, we're still after that van. They don't know that the team has actually spilled out and gotten into another vehicle. And you can also do that with, well, not necessarily with the pilot program, but once you get out of their line of sight by either breaking their attention by a bridge to get away from the chopper, just spill out and then let the pilot program take care of things. You might take a little bit of damage from hit the asphalt, but you're Shadowrunner. Roll with it,
That particular situation where Kat just mentioned of going under the thing, tucking and rolling, letting it auto drive, that is the perfect example of what burning an edge to survive the situation looks like. You are tucking and rolling. The cops are going to continue after your car and pay no attention to the homeless hobo underneath the overpass that is hanging out there for shelter, because that's you. That's your runner. In that situation, the burned edge should probably not come down as hard as you is for avoiding death, but creating a situation where the burning of edge should facilitate that kind of stuff, it's fairly easy. There was 3 runners that got arrested a couple of weeks ago because they all stayed in the car and KE was after them. They could have very easily had the guys that didn't own the car could have easily bailed out, ran around. Oh God, the bees are attacking me, and burned an edge in that situation. And ISGM would have let them go. The guy in the car, however, he's got bigger problems because that's a thing that I can very easily see. And with the car continuing to run away from the cops in this situation, I'm going after it because that is the thing that did the crime.
The disadvantage to that is it autopilot or grid guide? Because if you're in a police chase situation, grid guide is the enemy and not the friend.
Yep. They will shut that down
Yeah.
ASAP.
Yep. More importantly than just shutting it down, they will potentially have it set up so that, all right, there are no other vehicles in this area. When your car tries to subscribe to it in that area, it tells your car to pull over and stop.
Yep. And the pilot program trumps manual controls, by the way.
Yep. Manual control is at the bottom of the list.
Should you burn edge if the runner did it on his own without it? You mean as far as getting away? It is real hard to get away without the GM being incredibly lenient.
Or the plan being really good. There's a handful of runners that can pull it off, but for the most case, like, we're going to ask for burning edge to escape if we as GMs see there's really the decisions that are being made are not going to solve the problem. It also depends on the situation. Like my run where I had a archer shoot a KE police drone and then shoot the driver of a patrol car and then shoot his partner and then shoot at the Northrop Wasp with the assault cannon that was also there, and he also shot at the Spirit. So he's injured at least 3 officers and he's attacked 5.
He's declared his intent.
I wouldn't be surprised if, unlike police dogs today, that police spirits in the future would also count as officers.
Well, yeah, because if you disrupt that spirit, then the guy's got to summon him again, and that's super bad.
Yeah.
But so you've got these things, and then he says, "Okay, so can I burn edge to escape without consequences?" And it's like, there's no way in hell that I'm going to allow that. You've got a helicopter with an anti-tank gun staring at you, and you think you're going to get away. No.
When planning a run, I tend to work by frameworks. I have loose ideas that I want to accomplish because I recognize that it is going to be me versus 4 other reasonably intelligent human beings, and I cannot account for everything that they're planning to do. So while I have an idea of what I want to do, I will listen to runners, and I will sometimes use some of their ideas. Like if they come up with a really good solution to a problem that I come up with, yeah, I will let them do that. Or if they come up with a reasonable precaution, like they're like, this is a AAA corporation. There's no way that they won't have pressure sensors out in the lawn for us to be rolling up on. I'm like, didn't think about pressure plates, but that's a good idea. So I'm going to go ahead and put pressure plates out there because yeah, that makes a lot of sense for them to be pressure plates out there. And B, now these guys are going to be looking for pressure plates, and that makes them feel like they have outsmarted the game plan because I knew these pressure plates would be here, guys. Look, we found them. It's more empowering for me to be able to say yes to a player than to say no, I guess.
Yeah. Like when I make a run, I will have, okay, here's the objective. Here are the reasonable precautions that somebody who is holding that MacGuffin will take. And then there will be the assumed competency, because assumed competency goes both ways. That security level would take. So when the team comes up with their ideas, they'll be like, okay, well, yeah, where are the cameras? In a AAA zone, there's going to be cameras everywhere, and they're going to have full 360 coverage. I mean, you're going to get caught on a camera. Whereas, like in a C zone, there's going to be a couple cameras. Maybe they're moved off. Hey, there's an opportunity that they can exploit. Um, but if you analysis paralysis then goes both ways. You as a GM can overplan and have all these things and spend all this time putting all these little details together, but you are human and you are going to miss something. And either you're going to write it in, and that's going to be a bitch for the team because they just had this great, cool idea, and you're like, oh no, they've already thought of that, har har. That cheapens the moment.
Yeah, that's
Or
kind of a dick move.
it's straight a dick move. It works sometimes, but not like once you start going for like the way out there things. Like, okay, well, what if we did, a drop from low Earth orbit? And like, oh no, see, they've got a baffle shield that opens up at 5 clicks above that you'll hit and slide off. It's like, no, come on, no reasonable person's gonna fucking think of that. That's bullshit. So plan as much as you want, but realize that most of that planning is just going to be wasted, and you're not going to plan for everything. It is just impossible.
I will plan maybe a paragraph or two for a run that I am running. And after that, it comes down to improvisation and two very important things: tropes and cliches. If I have you stealing a MacGuffin and you guys get a replica of that MacGuffin, you can be damn well sure that there's going to be a pedestal with a glass case on it that you're going to have to Indiana Jones it off of there. That's what the players are expecting, and that's gives you something to fall back on without having um, to work out all the exact details of the actual security plan. You don't have to worry about, all right, there's a pressure sensor, it has this threshold and that kind of thing. It's just this is what's going to kind of happen. And when you can have players that buy into those tropes and cliches, like my Battle of the Bands run, where they were all about, they could have solved that like a normal Shadowrun team. I didn't choose a Shadowrun team for that, because that is not the game that I was trying to put forth. They could have gone and sabotaged his equipment and stuff. Instead, they decided to take the metal approach and straight up just win.
So go Team Awesome.
Yes, indeed.
Tryhard, you are correct that if you air quotes plan too much, you shouldn't be angry or feel similarly to that about it. That just means you have more scenes that you can use another time. This is true. However, I find that most of the time people who plan a lot try to fit all of that stuff into the same run.
Right.
When I used to run Dungeon World for a couple of friends of mine in the local area, I would come up with room ideas that I have in my Google Drive folder that I would bring up at different times as we were playing through when I got the twinge that this is an appropriate situation. I didn't try to fit them all into the same place, because then you got to scramble to build new things, and something that runners don't see is new to the next group of runners.
Yeah. The longest run plan that I've ever written is for an A-level corporation that is actually a hotel. And I had to write this plan out because the goal of the Shadowrunners going up against this corporation was to bring this company down. So I had to have a full security plan saying, if somebody decided to come in and break this place, how are they going to defend against it? And this is like an 8 or 10 page document. I used 1 page of that document. I've got the other 9 pages just waiting. The next time somebody says, "Hey, we should go do something against Fantasy World," I've got a whole plan set aside for people to have fun with.
Fantasy World needs to ride again.
somewhere
again.
somebody just had terrible chills go down their spine.
Yeah.
Um,
Black Cat just howled.
That'd be really awkward conversations. They did a, um,
What happened to Tourette's? I don't know.
yeah, well, if there is a time you want to murder a bunch of runners in the Arctic, a, a detailed plan is super appropriate. And I am sorry for continuing to label you as that guy, but the
For like primes and extreme threats, yeah, the more planning the better, because that's less planning for you and more justification to interpersonal and thematics that yeah, you were intending on this to be difficult and this is how difficult it was.
yeah.
That way the players don't come back and say, oh well, he unfairly targeted us. Mirror.
The only time that I really write things down is if I have a gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I make sure that I give that gotcha to another GM. So when the players say, "Oh, well, Cat put bombs off the side of the road," when that was the only way that we could go to avoid his obvious ambush,
Yep.
I can say, "Actually, no, those bombs were there because that was the plan, was the obvious ambush."
In those situations, if you have it written up as like, if you're worried about that kind of thing, more so like the being called out for a gotcha, um, write it up in like at a proposal and just private message it to thematics, so that this way, when when it happens, they can be like, no, we knew about this a couple of times. I know I talked to Will about his Arctic run. I talked to a couple of people about my Mama's Boys run. Um, I imagine Oz talked to at least one other or two other people as um, about his Fantasyland stuff.
I informed them. I didn't talk to them about it. I'm like, this is how it's going to go down. And they're like,
Um,
okay.
But
to answer your question about deep runs and that kind of stuff, no.
uh,
Yeah.
As
If
a
if
mid-run thing, there is effectively nothing you need to do a deep run for if the run was not set up for that way. It's like, I'm going to initiate in the middle of this run, guys. I'll be back. Let me
yeah,
go. Let me go to the meta planes to find the answer to this thing. Just, you want to do a deep run? Awesome, go for it. Advertise it as a deep run, because with deep runs, you're
it takes the entire party out of it. Like
yeah.
yeah.
you've just stolen the spotlight for the next 4 to 6 hours, so you can try and one man it. And if there's anything that will piss a GM off, it is trying to hog the spotlight from the other 3 to 4 people he's got at that table, especially for something he didn't initially plan for.
The like, that stuff is cool and wonderful, but it's another thing. Uh, Contacts can be a little bit of both. Um, you can design a run to give a contact specifically. Um,
I would love a run to get contact. Sorry, go ahead.
I had an idea for that. I just need to not be lazy. Maybe this weekend.
Uh,
Um, Certain contacts, yes, by all means. If it was really relevant, like in the, I like to call it the greatest dump trucking of all time. Um, the run that Oz did, Rose picked up the Guadalajaran handyman contact because I arranged for them to get a bunch of money through Carolus, and that's how the story is going to continue to be told. Um,
Right.
they're a 2-1 contact, so they're not like a giant dangerous thing to be kind of given out. Um,
See you later, try hard.
but at the same
We are going to try to
time,
do more.
it can add a lot of, like, it'll be something on their character sheet that they can look at and be like, this is a remembrance to that run that they did. And like, every time I see the Guadalajara and Handyman on my sheet, I'm like, maybe I can use them in the future.
It is a potential dump truck for further runs.
Oh yes, the best.
All right.
I
Well,
would like to wrap up shortly because it's about
Yeah, I
10
was
o'clock
saying
here.
we have
Yeah,
been
it is
two
time.
hours and 30 minutes. So thank you everyone that has show up tonight. We really enjoyed doing this, and yes, we're going to try to do two more of them in the future. Maybe not monthly, but maybe once every couple months, where we can get together with a group of players and GMs and talk about stuff. And so thank you all for showing up. Any
Yep.
last words from you two?
Go ahead, since this is my stream, I'll finish it out.
All
Oh,
right.
sorry.
So the biggest thing that any GM can remember is, yeah, be flexible, be open, and don't be afraid to let the runners kind of jump off the rails a little bit to tell a better story, just as long as your objective is met. That's it for me.
Once again, thank you guys for coming out. Anything the hub was founded on the idea of getting more people to play Shadowrun, and you guys stepping up to take the GM chair facilitates that goal and that plan. As such, we should also come together to make sure that everybody isn't as stressed out as they would normally be from GMing. Like, the big chair has a stigma about it, about, oh god, I need to know all the rules and all this other stuff. No, it's not that serious. That being said, I've personally been busy on our Shadowrun doing a lot of GM oriented stuff, and I will continue to do so. And drop those links and videos all over, at the very least, OOC chat and that kind of stuff. So while as a hub specific GM Fireside we might not be as often, I will probably be doing some stuff maybe once a month or so, at least a game for GMs. Gwyn was in the last one that I did. He can give you commentary on how that went. Yeah, I guess that'll be it then for tonight. I will supply a link to this YouTube video when I upload it tomorrow to TD or Upkeep or whatever to get it stuck somewhere on the Shadowsea sidebar so that it is accessible. I guess that's it then, guys.
All right, then.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you very much.